Hello, I'm Helen Bradley. Welcome to this video tutorial. In this tutorial, I'll show you how to process a cityscape image that has fall colors in it, and we're going to do it in Lightroom. Before we get started with this video tutorial, let's look and see what we're going to be working with. This is the starter image. It's been cropped and straightened, but basically this is the image that we're starting with. And this is what we're going to do with the image. We're going to lighten and brighten it and also make it look as if these fall leaves are slightly translucent. The first thing that I'm going to do before I start processing this photo is to crop it, because I really want to find a bit more of a point of interest in the image. So I'm going to bring down the top here. I'm really going to crop it almost to square, but not quite. And I think the St. Paul's dome here is a little bit crooked, so I'm just going to straighten that in the process. So this is going to be the image that we're working with. We'll start by looking at the basic panel adjustments. The image is underexposed, so we're going to bump up the exposure a little bit to lighten it, and then we'll add a little bit of contrast. I'm going to bring down the highlights, which is going to bring down the sky, and that's going to keep the color in the sky. I want to open up the shadows because I want to start seeing through these leaves. I really want them to be almost slightly translucent, and we're going to need to lighten them quite a bit to do that. And since the leaves are in the sort of shadow area of the image, by increasing shadows we'll be able to make them feel a little bit more translucent. To quickly create your white point, hold the Shift key and double click on the indicator here in the middle of the slider. That sets Lightroom to automatically create your white point for you. And you can do it also for the blacks. Shift double click on the slider here, and that creates a black point. Now we'll go to clarity and add quite a bit of clarity into the image. The downside of this is it does tend to darken it a little bit, but we'll add some vibrance to boost some of these colors. Now if we want these leaves to be a little bit yellower and a little bit more translucent, we're going to need to adjust them. So I'm going to the color settings here, and we're going first of all to yellow, because some of the leaves are in this yellow area. And if we want them to be a little bit more orange, then we can take the hue towards the orange. But of course that's darkening it a little bit, so we can not only increase saturation, but we can also increase luminance. And if we wind luminance up really high, we're going to start getting some lightness back in the leaves. Let's go to orange and do the same thing. We're going to boost the luminance to lighten them. We can also boost the saturation to build in a little bit more orange. And let's take this a little bit towards red, so we get this sort of really delicious color in the leaves. They've gone from brown to more interesting red. And then we can just check the reds. I don't actually think we're going to get a lot of mileage out of the reds, so I'm going to call that good for now. Let's go to tone curve though and see if anything in the tone curve can help us. We'll try medium contrast and then strong contrast. Well, I think medium contrast is helping a little bit, so I'm going to select that. And now I'm heading back to the basic panel because I still think this image needs a little bit more exposure. So I'm just going to crank the exposure up a little bit. Now let's focus on St. Paul's. The dome here is blue in color, but it's showing up a little bit more gray. Let's go to the color settings for the blue and let's see if we can improve it. I'm going first to aqua, and I'm going to take aqua a little bit closer to blue, and I'm going to increase the saturation on it and decrease the luminance, because that's going to darken it a little bit. And I'll do the same in the blue channel. Increase saturation, decrease luminance. Now we've got some problems happening in the blue around here, but the dome right now is just fine. So let's go and solve our blue color problems using the adjustment brush. I'm selecting the adjustment brush. I have auto mask turned on, and I'm going to decrease the feather quite a bit because these areas of blue are really quite solid edge. I'm just going to decrease the size. I'm going to click once to pin this down. Now I've got some really high exposure settings here set, but that's okay because we're not actually going to use those. I'm just going to paint over the blue areas. So this is helping me see just where the blue is being painted on. I'm a little bit concerned down here too. There's a little bit of blue here in this area. So really just clicking because I have the auto mask on. If I click with the little X mark in the middle of my brush over a blue area, I'm going to be letting Lightroom make the selection for me. Let's go and see the overlay. Well, the mask overlay can be seen by pressing the letter O. Now we're ready to go and actually do something with this selection. First thing I want to do is to turn this effect off because it wasn't helping me much in the long term. What we want to do here is to decrease the saturation a little bit so we're getting more grey than blue. That's one way of killing that blue color. The other way of killing the blue color is to add its opposite, which is yellow. So I'm going to select on color and I'm going to select a sort of yellow color. The more yellow we add, the more we negate this blue. So I'm going to add quite a bit of yellow here. I can also lighten this a little bit. Anything that I can do that's going to downplay the blue will be effective in this image. But I don't want to over lighten it because I don't want your eye to go there first of all. So I'll click Done. Now we're ready to sharpen the image. Let's just have a look at it and you'll see that there's a lot of grain in this image. So let's get rid of that sort of grainy noise and sharpen it. And we do that in the Detail panel. First of all, I'm just going to wind up luminance noise and see if it is luminance noise or color noise that's causing the problem. So I'm going to check each in turn. Well, winding up color noise does absolutely nothing to the image. So I'm just going to double click the word color to reset that to the standard for raw images, which is 25. So obviously the noise that we're seeing right now in the image is pretty much all luminance noise. So I'm going to wind this up to a fairly high setting because I want to get rid of as much of it as I can. Now let's go and sharpen the image, and I'm going to do that with some of these leaves visible on the screen so I can see the effect of my sharpening. I'm going to wind my sharpening up to about 100. And I'm going to hold the Alt key as I drag on the radius slider. This is going to show me where the halos are. Right now, the halos are starting to appear not only around the leaves, but also in those noisy areas inside the leaves, and I don't want that to be the case. I want to limit my halos as much as possible to just the outside edges of the leaves. So I'm actually going to bring the radius down to 0.5, its smallest value. And then I'm going to check detail again, Alt, drag on the detail slider. And here what I want to do is to, as much as possible, limit again these halos to the very edges in the image. So again, I want a really, really small detail value for this image. And now let's go and mask our sharpening. Holding the Alt or Option key again, I'm going to drag on the mask, and what I want to do is see that the white is disappearing from the middle of the leaves. I don't want to sharpen the middle of these leaves, but I do want to sharpen the edges, and I do want to do that fairly intensively. So this is a fairly unusual set of sharpening values. I've got radius and detail down at their very lowest, masking up at its very highest, and I'm going to add quite a bit of extra sharpening to the image because all that's being sharpened is the very edges in the leaves. So let's zoom back out. So let's see how far we've come. I'm just going to turn the lights out here in Lightroom by pressing the letter L. Now I'll press the backslash key. So this is the image that we started out with. It's the cropped version of the image, but you can see that the leaves are very dark. It's a lackluster sort of image. And this is the result that we've been able to achieve. We've been able to lighten and brighten the leaves and give them a little bit more of an orangey yellow glow. We've also been able to give the dome of St. Paul's a little bit of extra color. So again, the before and the after. I'm Helen Bradley. Thank you for joining me for this video tutorial. Look out for more video tutorials here on my YouTube channel. And consider subscribing to my channel and you'll be alerted when new videos are released. And visit my website at projectwoman.com where you'll find more tips, tricks, and tutorials on a range of applications, including Photoshop, Lightroom, Illustrator, and a whole lot more.